much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We are a constitutional republic, not an unrestricted democracy. Today, everything is up for a vote. Very little should be up for a vote. Like, for example, who should represent the good people of the state of Arizona? That should be up for a vote. What should the age of consent be? This is something that reasonable minds disagree on. That should be up for a vote. But everything else that we are voting on that has anything to do with your body, your property, your money, your time, that's what freedom is about, folks. None of that should be up for a vote.
I'll tell you what, folks, that may be the weirdest answer I've ever heard in my life in a debate. The weirdest answer. All right, welcome Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. It is Dress Down Friday over here. So while I go on other shows, maybe buttoned up, it's Dress Down Friday, Freewheeling Friday. So get your questions in. Laura will grab them, throw them into the comment section for me to look at. All right, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into Arizona. There was a debate last night. That's what that was from, for those who don't know. That was, you know, I don't know. I feel like the Libertarians may be a little bit different, because anybody who, and this is just no offense, it's just the way it is. But anyone who's, you know, I myself have not had that much experience, you know, with the National Libertarian Party, but I do know, you know, several people who have been active in state libertarian politics for a while. And, you know, that's just maybe one of the worst answers I've ever seen given in a debate of any kind. Senate, president, that was just god awful. It was terrible. And I wonder how that would work, you know, I wonder how it would work if that took votes away. He was drawing about 2% in the poll we did for CDMedia, which you guys can go to cdm.press and go check out for Arizona. I'm going to do Arizona one more time, whether it's, we'll see whether it's for CDMedia or I do it on my own. But this is one of those races where this is so close at the Senate level, so close that I'd like to see again, maybe in 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit, maybe right at the end, whether or not this race changed direction at all. And we're going to, when we go into the numbers today, you'll see why I'm thinking that this debate could have had an impact. Because who does Blake Masters need to speak to, right? And then did he? And we'll talk about that. And then, of course, who watches these debates? Now, I know he's going to do an ad blitz at the end here to try to put up as much of that debate in front of the public as possible for those who didn't catch it, which is smart. It's very smart, because he reminds me of, or his task reminds me of the task that Rick Scott had ahead of him in 2018 in a bad Republican year, which was to unmask someone who has, especially among older Republican-leaning voters, these people view these candidates, these Democrats, as like moderate Democratic senators, you know, the astronaut effect, right? And the truth is, you know, Bill Nelson would like do really well in Monroe County, even though Republicans would carry Monroe County statewide. Bill Nelson would be able to do so well there. And then even among some voters in Lee, where the villages are, and, you know, for years, Republicans, or cycles, not years, cycles, Republicans would be like, what the hell? What the hell? And it's because they're able to hold this mask of a moderate. And Bill Nelson was no longer able to do that. Rick Scott had more money than Blake Masters, but the fact this race is this close after the disparity in spending has been so big, and again, we've shown this before, we'll show it again. Arizona is the only state in which Republicans did not outspend Democrats in the month of September, and as you could see there, total Dem spending was more than slightly more than double what Blake Masters spent in the surge, the Republican spending surge of September. So going into October, looks like the National Republican Senatorial Committee is going to dump more money in Arizona. It's not huge, but they're re-entering it. And then Peter Thiel is going to put more money in. I absolutely think Donald Trump's PAC, if he wants Blake Masters to win, should do it. You're just giving advice based on what I see. All he really has to do is get this message out, because I think last night, and we'll take a look at some clips, I think last night Blake Masters came across as what he needed to come across as. What do I mean by that? He needed to come across as somebody who was educated, isn't scary, address the issue of abortion, which they've been beating him on, and then play to his strengths without looking like an extremist, which his strengths, of course, immigration and border security. Why? Because Mark Kelly has failed there. On inflation, why? It's the number one issue, and it's the number one issue going away. You will see that abortion, when we look at most important voting issues, abortion did poll it's a top voting issue, but it is driven by Democrats. It is not driven by even close to a plurality, let alone a majority of independents and Republicans. The rest of the electorate is focused on cost of living and inflation. And then it's funny because issue 2, 3, and 4 are basically like statistical ties within each other. And that's economy and jobs rounding out number 4, and abortion and border security being very close to number 2, very right, definitely within the sampling error of those two issues. So, if you combined economics, it's like half the electorate. If meaning cost of living, inflation, economy, and jobs, right? If you combine economic concerns, it's half the electorate. Another 15 is immigration and border security, and then abortion is within border security. So between economic and the economy, and jobs and inflation, plus immigration and border security, you're looking at almost a supermajority. That's what concerns them. And then you have abortion. To me, you can't win an election if you lead only on the number 1 voting issue, right? It's a set of issues. Why do I mean that? Look, unless the number 1 is really number 1, but if you're seeing it spliced up, and the cost of living inflation issue is by far the number 1 issue. I'm talking about if like 55% of jobs in the economy, and then the rest were divvied up, in single digits or low double digits among other issues. And if you were dominating on that one issue, then certainly you could piece together a 50+1 coalition and win. But if there's really more like a 3 to 5 issue set, and you're getting creamed on the number 1, the number 3, 4, and 5, or the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, the number 5, and yet you're leading in number 4, you can't win like that. You can't win with that issue set. All right, so let's start just taking a look at it. Everybody was obviously most interested in the race for Senate and governor, so let's pull that up real quick. All right, here is the Senate first. This is, and you know what? Let me bring up the CDMedia article on this, because I think we put a lot of good points. Why does it really matter? Let me just go to the homepage, and then it'll be there. Why does it matter when we look at some of the demographics that we put up compared to everything else? All right, and then what did we see since the last time we polled Arizona? Okay. So obviously right here, this is well within the sampling error, 45.8 for Mark Kelly to 45.2 for Blake Masters. Since the last time we polled, and we said when we polled that 70% plus of the undecided vote disapproved of the job Joe Biden was doing. Of that, 62 strongly disapproved. And we tried telling people that when these people would hiccup, when these people would decide, it would likely, in all likelihood, considering that is what happens especially in a first-term midterm election, it would go against the candidate of the president's party. No election forecaster could debate me on that. No fake forecaster who really is a poll reader could debate me on that. They will never be able to show you another election where overall that isn't what is expected to have happened and what in fact did happen at the end of the day. Public polling be damned. It doesn't matter who the poll said on the top lines would win these races. When you dig inside the numbers and you look in depth like this, it has predictive patterns. I mean, this happens over and over and over again. They can't show you a single election in which that didn't happen. All right? Not in an environment that's obviously showing the same indicators. All right? All right. So back in July, Kelly held a lead over Masters 43.7 to 40.6. So we had a nice early lead there with somebody 7.8 opting for someone else and another 8% saying they were undecided. That being said, we talked about who approved and who disapproved. The incumbent since that poll has risen 2.1, while Blake Masters, the challenger, has gained 4.6. Libertarian Mark Victor, by the way, earned 1.8%, and 7.2 right now remain undecided. All right, so the movement came almost exclusively, folks, from people who we told you disapprove of the job that Joe Biden is doing, and among those who previously indicated that they would vote for someone else. What happened? Coming home happened. All right. And, the truth is a lot of those independents and those third-party voters who say they're going to vote for someone else early, in fact, do not. We tell you these same things over and over again. And what happens is that big chunk of someone else that's early really whittles down. All right. That happens in presidential cycles as well, which is why when you see our numbers, you should expect that someone else whittles down and that Biden would gain from that. But as of right now, when you see CDMedia publish it, you will see that Trump has a more consolidated base. Let me put it that way. All right. So why? Because Republicans are coming home. All right. All right. So overall in Maricopa, this is important, obviously, for a reason. Maricopa is roughly 60% of the vote statewide. It can range anywhere from 58 to 61, 62 even, if they really have a higher turnout differential. All right. But generally speaking, 60%. It is important also because Mark Kelly led in Maricopa by 7 points in our last polling. All right. And also, too, obviously, it's important because of who's undecided, where they're undecided, okay, and as far as, what can we expect from them. All right, in Pima, this is a Democratic county, and it is a county that if Maricopa's, let's call it even, or even a Democrat wins it by a little bit, a Republican can still carry the state if the rest of the state turnout in like Navajo and Mojave and Yavapai and Yuma are really high. It is possible. All right. Everywhere. It has to be like that across the board, even in smaller areas like Gila. Trump juiced turnout in the rest of the state and technically could have won the state of Arizona even if you lost Maricopa. But you don't want to lose Maricopa, period. Now, it's well within the sampling era, but Blake Masters currently leads in Maricopa 46.9 to 45.7. This is also another reason why that final margin is important. Kelly had a 7-point lead in our last poll. When we started, it looked like Kelly was going to still maintain anywhere between a 3 and 5-point lead. Over the course of polling, we caught something that we caught a shift that was happening on the ground at that time. And we watched Blake Masters erase Mark Kelly's lead in Maricopa. All right. All right. So Pima, Democratic area, 58.1 to 33.2 favor of Mark Kelly. Republicans have to get, Trump was able to bring Pima to damn near 40% rough in both 16 and 20. You don't want to fall below 38% in Pima. Would make it very difficult. You'd have to, it increases the margin you have to win Maricopa by. All right. So Masters needs to bring up that it's a matter of who's undecided. And you don't expect, even in Pima, who's left, which we're going to go over, you don't expect these people to break much more for Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly may or may not crack 60%, which is a warning sign for him. I expect he will, but it's still a warning sign because Masters could still be at like 38. And if that's the case, he could win the state. All right. Men back Masters, 48.7 to 38 flat. 49.6 to 40.7 for Mark Kelly, where women back Kelly 50.5 to 41.1. However, Masters has one of the most juiced bases out of any candidate we've polled this cycle. Even though the overall margin is what it is, he still leads Kelly among those certain to vote, 47.6 to 46.5. And even some of the other voting likelihood, look, at this point, we're in the beginning of October. You'll start to see, it's just how it's our methodology. It's how we roll. You will start to see that likely to vote, meaning the odds are equal or greater than 50-50, greater than 0, but excuse me, greater or equal to 50-50. All right, but less than 100. That unlikely to vote starts to whittle down as well, and it's greater than 0, but less than 50-50. Mark Kelly used to lead with both of those categories, and Kelly and Masters now has taken both of them. All right. So, has taken one of them. All right. So that is a little bit of a change. And I think what's going to happen here, what you're going to see happen here, is that likely to vote or certain to vote, is going to expand. And as that group expands, the margin will matter even more and more. And eventually, as we get to the end of the election, we get closer to the election, certain to vote will be almost 100% of the sample. All right. Almost. Because at that point, you already know, like, look, did you drop your ballot off yet? No, you're not going to, are you? Okay. But all right, you are certain to vote on election day. We will tighten that screen. All right. Mark Kelly still leads among those who are very enthusiastic, and he leads 51 to 41. But Masters leads among those, the more important measure, as you guys know, because we've talked about this a lot, the more important measure, which is extremely, and he leads 51.6 to 45.6. Just like in the other poll, which we went over, which I showed you, it is important. That extremely is more important than very, a lot more important than anything else. Why? Nearly all voters who say they're extremely enthusiastic to vote are also certain to vote. Nearly every single one, 97.9%. Far fewer Democrats in Arizona at 63% than Republicans, who are at 72%, report being extremely enthusiastic to vote. All right. Also, as well, Republicans are by far more certain to vote. 93.2%. That's pretty solid there, folks. That's a big turnout. Look, also, I got to say, and if I forget, somebody remind me to talk about what we can expect this year from how votes will be reported in Arizona. We have seen a pattern from 2020 now into the primaries in 2022, which is definitely going to extend into November, which is that Arizona, just like Florida, used to be almost universal mail-in state for Republicans. That is not the case anymore. Republicans more and more and more are going to vote on election day, okay? Which will lead people to Fox News should have a friggin' field day with this, given their history of race calls in their decision at their decision desk in Arizona. They could there because you could make a huge fool of yourself. Even no warning, you could make a huge fool of yourself. Election day vote is almost up to a third in self-proclamation anyway. We'll see if that actually holds and whether it turns out to be the case. But the election day vote in the primary was massive. It was historic. It was typically 12%, maybe 12 to 18% in previous, 18 being a big election day turnout in Arizona in previous pre-COVID cycles. We're going to have to use COVID as this like benchmark for this. That is not the case anymore. big election day turnout in July, and you just might as well expect that to be, or yeah, was it July or August? I can't remember when the primary was, but it's over the summer. And you could expect that to be the case going into November. High school or less, Masters is actually very close. However, there are a lot of undecideds left. This is a big deal. I spoke on War Room a little bit about this with the Secretary of State. I didn't get a chance to talk about it enough. They are the most undecided left. And Blake Masters' ability to turn that margin more into a Kerry Lake margin, which we're going to go over, is going to decide this election. All right. He's not going to be able to do as well with the 4 years as Kerry Lake is. Maybe he does. Maybe he does. I don't want to be unfair here. Maybe he does. It's not that bad, actually, right now, as you can see. 4-year degree is going for Mark Kelly 50.4 to 42.4. There's something going on, and it's going on everywhere. We saw it in Nevada. We saw it in Wisconsin. We even saw it in Pennsylvania. We're seeing it everywhere, and we have to talk about this. The some college associate boom for Republican candidates. I think personally, I have a theory here. Some of these people, a lot of these people probably, were high school or less in 2016 and 2020. And from 2016 to 2022, they got associate's degrees or went and got some college. But in the end, did not move in to the 4-year undergraduate category. They went back into the labor force. Or hopefully they did, and they're trying. Why does this make sense? Because of the crossover between people who say they have some college associate degree or a high school degree or less, all right, and they make pretty good money, some of them. Those people are the most likely to vote Republican. Maybe they went out, they couldn't deal in the labor market, which sucks, so they went out and they started their own business, became entrepreneurs, whatever it may be. These are heavily Republican voters. Maybe they went back into the labor force and succeeded because they wake up every day and bust their asses. These are heavily Republican voters. And I think what happened is a few years ago when we were polling them, under the Trump era, they were high school and less. Yes, it's true. Trump still does better with that high school or less category. But I think we can see why some college and associate degrees now we're getting so Republican and why that margin is expanding for Republican candidates everywhere. And it's not just for Blake Masters. We saw it for Adam Laxalt. You're going to see it for a lot of Republicans in Arizona in this today. All right. It's something that's happened. I think it's just a little bit of what we call political maturation. Sorry. Advanced degrees, obviously, a very pro-Kelly group, 58.9 to 38.1. Here is who is undecided by education. Are you ready? Overall, 7.2 still remain undecided in this race. I could have closed the likely voter model more, but Arizona looks like it's about to have historic turnout, and I didn't want to screen anybody out if they didn't have, traditional sufficient vote history. I think these people are going to vote. I really do. All right. High school or less, they make up the lion's share of it, 12%. Some college associate, they are the second largest undecided group, just 7%. And I'm rounding here, 6.8. The other one was 11.9. I'm rounding here. 4-year degree, only 6. Advanced degree, only 4. Why does that matter? Because Arizona's 60% non-4-year degree or higher. So it is important to look by education because some of the other demographics, when you look at them among undecided, you think, damn, maybe Blake Masters can't overtake him because of, some of these groups look like they would go for Kelly. It's not true. Blake Masters absolutely can overtake Mark Kelly, without a doubt. All right, so let's take a look more at the crosstabs here, okay? Let's bring in the crosstabs. Remove this. Make the crosstabs bigger. All right, we went over region. Let's look at military veteran. And actually, let's just go to Senate and isolate Senate. Mark Kelly has made an effort to go after active duty military members and veterans. As you can see here, it doesn't look like it's working all that much. He's only winning people who are not in the military by 4, where Masters is winning the military vote 58 to 29.8 or 30, excuse me, let's call it that. And he's winning the veteran vote 55-37. All right. That was, look, in the raw, it actually was a lot more. And I'm going to tell you right now, without online panel, I want to put mode to show you guys. Hold on. The online responses certainly made it, or actually I'll put it in my own and I'll read it to you from here. But phone components, that margin was much bigger for Blake Masters. Among veterans, it was 77% on the phone, if I remember correctly. Let me just make sure here. Give me 1 second. I'm like fairly certain I'm right as far as how survey data, go to mode, pull mode over, let it update, isolate the Senate to mode. So Masters actually leads in the phone interviews, 50.5 to 42.6, whereas Kelly led in the online 52.7 to 33.8. I did a 75-25 split. That has been when you always adjust as time goes on. And polling the primaries, the online modes were too liberal. We're too liberal, and liberal's the right word because you've heard other pollsters who have been correct recently. You've had them talk about this as well. They are 100% correct. Robert Cahaley told Sebastian Gorka this the other day. He told CNN the same thing. He is 100% correct. If you are not careful, you will reach the more moderate to liberal Republican voter more than you will reach an actual representative sample of Republican voters. It used to be these people are hard to reach. Now it's like incredibly difficult. So moving on to, let's see. There is something here. This is why it mattered. Okay. The independents got a lot closer. This is why it mattered. By the way, Kelly was leading independents in our last poll. This is a big deal because the electorate is going to be pretty damn Republican. All right. Let me see if I can find the last poll here. I thought we would have linked it. Okay. Hold on. Bear with me. I want to say it was a 10-point lead among independents, maybe even a little bit more, like 11 points. That Kelly had a lead among independents and those who consider themselves third-party voters. All right. And that has now vaporized. All right. It is very close, almost to where Carrie Lake has it, which she needs to. Another biggie while I look for this, a large chunk of registered Democrats who we know are Democrats. We know they are Democrats. A large chunk of Democratic registered voters were calling themselves independents. That is not good for Democrats. Okay. They absolutely need, actually, it was a little bit closer than I thought. I know this is this damn poll. Huh. No, it's not. All right. Mark Kelly had about an 8-point lead. So it's come down since then to 44.5 to 40.6. So we're talking about a 4. So Masters cut the lead among independents down to 4, and that trend is going in his direction with 11.5% or 12% rounded, still remaining undecided. This is a little bit worrisome for Blake Masters. It's 11% of Republicans who say they will vote for Mark Kelly. He has got to get rid of that. He can lose 8%, folks. He can lose 7%, and by the way, I think he'll probably win more Democrats than that suggests. So there's always a little bit of give and take there. But that 11% Republican base crossover to Mark Kelly is a problem for Blake Masters. It is not as big as what we saw McSally lose when she lost to Kirsten Sinema in 2018. McSally lost more than that. All right. This is why Blake's debate performance was very important. Some of this was older people who were concerned about Masters on Social Security And some of them were more moderate people who may have been concerned, very small percentage, but more moderate people who may have been concerned about abortion. Masters did what he had to do on abortion when he flatly said, I personally am against it, period, but I support the 15-week limit. You're the radical who supports abortion up to the point of birth. That is the answer textbook that Republicans need to give, because the truth is Arizonans do not support the Democratic position on abortion. They don't. Yes, majority of Americans tend to favor rights in general, so they don't want to see abortion illegal, period. So that can be effective for Democrats if they make that the conversation. But Kari Lake has been able to rebut that, and Blake Masters did a good job of rebutting it. And it matters because the people who may be persuaded by those ads, right, they're going to have been the ones who are watching the debate. Definitely these older voters who may be persuaded by the Social Security ads, they're the ones who are going to watch this debate. And Blake, look, I don't think there's anybody who watched that debate, whether you watched it last night, I watched most of it, but then I rewatched this morning. There is nobody who could seriously look you in the eye and say that Mark Kelly did not just lose that debate, ladies and gentlemen. Blake Masters eviscerated him. I was saying, look, all Blake has to do is, look educated, not scary, not affluent, articulate, right? Respond on that issue of abortion. It looked like Mark Kelly was only prepared to discuss abortion, and then when he couldn't land a blow on abortion, it was a problem for him. When he couldn't land a blow on abortion, then he had nothing. He got killed on the border. He got killed on inflation. And inflation's big because Masters made the case the real threat to your Social Security, folks, is the rise of inflation. Your fixed income, you're getting chipped away at. You have no ability to earn any more money. You're in the glory days, the golden years of your life, and you cannot have inflation at historic records, 40-year at least highs. You can't have it. It was brilliant. And that 10.8% right there tends to skew older. It doesn't tend to. It skews older. And I'm going to show you right now. By age. And I also have to put up age detail there. But by age, you can see that Mark Kelly is actually doing extremely well with seniors. He's winning 18 to 29, the youth vote, which Masters kind of holding his own in because the rest of them are more likely. Look, Kelly's going to win the youth vote, but he's not going to win it overwhelmingly. I'm telling you right now, he's not. These are working people. They're not college students. All right. He starts taking the lead from 30 to on and then loses it again at 64. This has been something we've been seeing. Some Democrats are doing better with seniors. He needed those seniors. Think about the VFW Republican, but he's more moderate or she's more moderate. Or the older Republican who looks at like, who's qualified? Mark Kelly's an astronaut. I really like that young man. Think about Dolores, all right? That's who Blake Masters had to speak to last night. Dolores from northwestern Maricopa. And then he also had to speak to the more moderate Republican from Scottsdale. Without a doubt, Blake Masters did what he had to do. Now he's got to get those voters to see it if they didn't see it already, which a lot of them are debate watchers. And he's got to make the case for them. All right. That last night was a devastating debate defeat for Mark Kelly, which is why so many of these people, this is why so many of these Democrats don't want to debate this year. You can't see Katie Hobbs get on a stage with Kari Lake. She'll brutalize her. If Hobbs was even had an inkling of changing her mind to debate Kari Lake last night, she saw what happened to Mark Kelly, and there's no way in hell she's getting on that stage now. And by the way, anyone who's ever met the People's Pundit in real life, I'm not exactly a towering man, all right? But, so I don't like to beat on the short guy. But, man, it did not look good with Blake Masters between them, looking like a towering figure of a man over one guy who looked like, I don't know, like a crazy leprechaun, unprepared crazy leprechaun. And another dude who just looked like, I don't know, he was eating mushrooms before he came on. Like, do I have to play the clip again? Laura was like, oh, you should have seen Laura's face last night when he was like, you know what, the age of consent, this should be up for a vote. And first of all, I couldn't get past what he said before that. It took me a second for that to sink in my mind, what he said, because at first I'm like, wait, he's like, who's your senator should be up for a vote. And I'm like, this is what you're doing here tonight, sir. What the hell are you talking about? The Senate is up for a vote right now. What? And then as I'm like, my brain's trying to process what he had said, that's when he made that comment. And Laura's like, mouth just totally, she was like, what? What did he just say? Yeah, libertarians are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And I have libertarian strains of personal views. I definitely have them. But this is why I never, ever could call myself a libertarian, because I'm telling you, folks, no offense if you're a member of the Libertarian Party, but you guys, there's some crazy folks in your ranks, man. Crazy. I just can't. I'm telling you, Bass Chica, I'm telling you, go back and look at the beginning. I played it in the beginning. I'll play it again. Okay, I'll play it again. A lot of people missed it. They missed the beginning. I'll play it again. It's only 30 seconds.
We are a constitutional republic, not an unrestricted democracy. Today, everything is up for a vote. Very little should be up for a vote. Like, for example, who should represent the good people of the state of Arizona? That should be up for a vote. What should the age of consent be? This is something that reasonable minds disagree on. That should be up for a vote. But everything else that we are voting on that has anything to do with your body, your property, your money, your time, that's what freedom is about, folks. None of that should be up for a vote.
First of all, he's intellectually wrong, aside from being nuts on that second answer. He's intellectually wrong as a libertarian, saying that the Senate should be up for a vote if he leads off with, we are a constitutional republic. Folks, we were a constitutional republic. They have moved us now into more like a democratic republic hybrid because of the 16th and 17th Amendments. The 17th Amendment, of course, instituted the direct elections of senators. A constitutional republic, which we were by original design, was not up for a vote, the Senate. You elected your state legislators, and they elected by vote in the state house and Senate. They elected your senators, not direct. So he's actually intellectually wrong with that. And then he goes on to the age of consent. Reasonable minds can disagree. I mean, folks, by age group, he had 1.7% among those who were 65 plus, 30 to 44. He's got 3.1%, 2% among 18 to 20. What Mark Kelly should be worried about after not only his own debate performance, but Mark Victor's debate performance is that the only ones he wouldn't have turned off there are ones who are potential Kelly voters, younger, more liberal. I'm trying to use my words correctly here. Voters who would never vote Republican anyway. They're the Hillary Clinton loss of vote to like Libertarian and Green Party candidates. The voter he would have lost last night is now a Masters voter. All right. So if Mark Victor loses a half a point or a point, it's going to Blake Masters, because it's going to be from older people who listen to him, maybe they're right leaning, but they didn't like Blake Masters because of some of the ads they saw. And now they just heard Mark Victor say one of the craziest things. No Kelly ad could depict Blake Masters as crazy as that. So now their choice is to vote for Mark Kelly or to vote for Blake Masters. They're going to pick Blake Masters. Okay. All right. So let's see. What else was there? Age was a good one. Income, education, we did. Income, it's kind of, people are like, how could you have Blake Masters with that small of a lead with working class people? Because Blake Masters is educated. He is not like an in the gutter kind of guy. So he has to straddle the line between winning the working class vote by a significant enough margin and not losing that 4-year degree. All right. So he's going to lose it, but it's a matter of how much he's going to lose it by. So he is different than Kerry Lake, even though Kerry Lake's affluent as well. It's just There's different stories there, folks. All right, different stories. All right, I am off on time here, so let's get this out of the way. We'll come back. We'll take a look at some more, and then we'll also look at the Senate. No, excuse me, the governor's race and the race for Secretary of State. Okay, all right. But before we do, let's go into it. All right. I really love my audience and love that you guys, things that I choose to bring to you, you absolutely take seriously. And, we get feedback, of course. And you guys are, we love you and appreciate you for it. It's really what I'm trying to get at here. Because you're serious people, that obviously you have to prepare. Food shortages could be coming even in the U.S. You think you're exempt from history. You're dead wrong. Drought, inflation, and even new government policies are absolutely pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is now more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits like Laura and I do for our family. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years super survival food. Hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the USA. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, water-resistant, light-resistant. They stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. Go look at this. Check it out. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP for the People's Pundit. 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit today. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile today, like Laura and I do for our family. And by the way, if you go to their awesome website and you try, maybe you'll get a 72-hour survival food kit, delicious mac and cheese. Those of you who bought it, I got your emails. You're welcome. All right. If you buy anything else on 4patriots.com, don't forget to use promo code TPP10 at checkout. Promo code TPP for the People's Pundit, 10 for 10% off, TPP10 at checkout to get your discount, your 10% discount across the board. All right. Let's take a look. We'll come back to some of the Senate too. You know what? Parental, actually. Let me show you that real quick. I'll just read off some of this, but Blake Masters is carrying people who have children over the age of 18, 50 to 42. He's carrying school-age children, parents, 49, 41. More under the age of 18, not yet going to Kelly, 51, 42. And those who don't have kids, going to Kelly, 54 to 35. All right. The biggest group, especially for a midterm in Arizona, is without a doubt going to be, yes, all 18 are over. So Masters' margin with that group is going to matter considerably. Who is the most undecided? That would be a Masters group. Yes, we have 1 or more school-age children under the age of 18, which is, again, why I say don't let age distract you. That younger voters are more undecided. They're less likely to vote. That's number 1. And number 2, these people don't have college degrees. They have children. They work. My God. They work. And there's actually slightly more right now. They're more independent. Independent, but right-leaning, even though they're younger. So Kelly, of course, is going to win the younger vote, 18 to 29 vote, but it actually could be pretty close. The white vote is going to be close. We are absolutely seeing in Arizona what we saw in Nevada, which is this new right coalition is less white. It's younger. Basically, it's the future. In a nutshell. Yeah, it's true. Republicans struggle with people who have college degrees, but the 4-year degree is getting closer, and they're not growing. That's the truth of it. They're not growing. In a state like Arizona, the population growth is coming from the working class Hispanic voter. And they're obviously white as well, but the whites have gotten more educated. White vote is always kind of close in Arizona. It's not like Nevada, which surprised me that it was close. It was only 4 points in 20 and 6 points for Trump in 2016, depending on the voter analysis or exit poll. Exit poll showed he was winning by like 10. But You change the math entirely if you outperform among other non-white working class groups. You change the math entirely. Ask Glenn Youngkin. Ask voters and candidates in Florida, which is less white than Arizona. All right. The white vote tightened in Florida. It's just that Republicans won so much more of the non-white vote. It didn't matter. Trump added 200,000 votes in South Florida. He did not do that on the backs of the white vote. He only won Monroe County by about 7 points. That's it. That used to be a pretty solid Republican county. It's still Republican, but it's not as Republican as it used to be. And like I said, one of those counties where you had very similar voting demographics Blake Masters is dealing with, that like looked at a so-called moderate astronaut, and say, oh, I could maybe vote for him. These older voters were not set in stone. And there absolutely was time for Blake Masters to change their minds. All right. All right, time to look at the governor's race. We'll come back to it all in a second here, but I know I got another break coming up. But let's look at the overall graphic, shall we? All right. This is the overall graphic. Listen, Lake, I actually thought the lead for Lake could be a little bit bigger, but it's around about 4 point, right? We have a 3.7. If Lake wins by 4 or more, the Senate is going to be very close, but I think Blake Masters can win. If Kari Lake wins by 5, he's going to win. If she wins by like 2.5, then it's going to be a nail biter, but Kelly will probably eke it out. All right. That makes sense when you look at the disparity between McSally and Trump in 2020. The thing with Kari Lake, though, folks, this is just a very smooth candidate. By the way, we will have Kari Lake on next week. Katie Hobbs, the invitation's open. We have had, by far, obviously, more right-wing candidates on than left-wing candidates. It's a shame, because it's a shame that after we do a poll, we would love for Democratic candidates to come on and discuss it. We would absolutely be fair with them. Absolutely. They just refuse to do it. This is like a hide in the basement strategy that they've devised in 2020. They want to ignore new media. They want to ignore alternative media, despite the fact that we have a superior track record. They don't want to come on and make the case. You go to my locals page right now, you'll see people who from all sides of the spectrum. It's a tragedy. And we're not the only ones who've had that problem. You know how many times Viva Barnes reaches out to a left-wing candidate? They don't answer. Tim Pool, same thing. We all talk. These people don't want to come on other shows. They want to hide in the basement. They want to go on MSNBC where it's friendly. They don't want to answer any questions, any real questions. It's sad. It's a real shame. Yeah, they don't. This is what Laura's trying to say in the background there, is that they know they don't really present well to the normal audience. So they would really just go in front of favorable audiences and then let the mainstream media tell the story to the center. That's what Joe Biden did. Katie Hobbs has taken the Joe Biden. Come on, Katie, come on the show. They don't. Yeah, they think, well, the truth is, Laura, they come across kind of snobby most of the time. So it looks good on Morning Joe because snobs are who's watching Morning Joe with their pumpkin spice latte, in October. Hey, I like pumpkin spice lattes. I'm just saying.
But they have their pink.
But you know what I'm talking about. It's a shame. I miss when we all just went everywhere. That's what and now it's like there's no point for a Republican to go on any of their things either. They're just sandbagged. You read WikiLeaks. Jake Tapper's producers, hey, so Cruz and Trump are the top 2 GOP nominees or potential frontrunners for the nomination. How do you want me to bury them on national security to help Hillary Clinton? It's just disgusting. So it's like, it isn't American at all. We're all supposed to be able to talk and debate with each other. It's terrible. Anyway, Lake has a lead 48.5 to 44.8, otherwise known as 49-45. In Maricopa, Kari Lake leads 50.3 to 44.8. In Pima, She's not doing bad in Pima, and Hobbs is not doing great. She's got to get sick. Like, for instance, give you Joe Biden margin in Pima. Real quick, I got it right here. It's taking a second to load up. Come on. All right, Arizona's loading up. In that's Nevada, stupid. All right, in yeah, this is bad for Katie Hobbs. In 2020, Joe Biden won Pima County, but he won at 58.6, and Trump took basically 40%, 39.9. Hobbs in trouble. That's not good. It's just not good, and everybody knows it. So let's stop the fake Hobbs plus threes from CNN. You know that you did that because you fudged your weights, because what they're trying to do is protect the Senate. So they wanted you to see like a Masters down by 6, so they had to give Hobbs like a 3-point lead. Because if they showed an even race or a Lake lead, it would mean that Kelly was either up within the sampling era or holding Masters and basically tied. There is that margin. And you can see it in every single poll that's released. That's why for instance, the CBS News poll, Lake is up, Masters is down by 3 only within the sampling error. If you give Lake a lead, you can't do anything to fudge your weights to give anything but like a plus maybe 2 or 3. And here, because our lead for Lake is a little bit bigger, and I think we're right, they're wrong, that it's tied at the Senate level. And we watched it. Laura, did we not watch it? At first, the first night, we collected maybe, 300 plus interviews. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oof, he really is running behind her. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But it was more significant. And then the second day, I was like, whoa, things are tightening up here. Remember? I was like, Laura, get over here. Look at this. By the third day, it was like, whoa, something's happening. Something's happening here. Oh, man, remember Gravity Falls? Oh, yeah. Those of you who have kids, you probably know Laura and I just talking about. But it's like one of those shows where it's still good for kids, but there are these adult jokes that fly under the radar, and you can sit there and watch it with your kid and be like, right? All right. So in the rest of the state, Lake is carrying it 51.4 to 38. Men back Lake 54.3 to 39.9. Women go for Hobbs barely 49.4 to 43. Certain to vote starts to widen out for Lake 55 40.9. That notice Kerry not only jumped points in certain to vote, but she went above 50%. Did you notice that? Masters was just below 50%. When you crack that 50 in this business, folks, and it's a lead that's outside the sampling era, I don't want to get in the weeds, but statistically, it's very significant. So the likely voter model is, there's not even likely to vote is suggesting that Lake could win by at least 5. All right. It depends. If like that levy breaks, then she could actually win by more. She could. Extremely enthusiastic is a 10-point advantage for Lake. 53.9 to 37.7. Also, while we bring up the governor's race here, you guys can follow along with the crosstabs. If you go to cdm.press, read one of the articles, scroll down to the bottom where there's a methodology statement. The crosstabs are linked in the methodology statement, and you can follow along with me. All right. Interesting enough, Hobbs is winning the less certain vote, the lower propensity midterm voter. She's only winning them 42-32, however, with 25% undecided. The unlikely to vote is a very small group. She's winning them, but it almost doesn't matter. The extremely you can see there, but in very enthusiastic as well, Hobbs only has a 3-point lead. And again, it matters. Enthusiasm matters because there's a direct relationship with certainty and likelihood to vote. All right. So if you do not have a competitive likely nature, then your voters being certain to vote is going to fall dramatically. And when the actual electorate shows up on election day, you can find your ass way outside of the margin. All right. And don't act like it hasn't happened a million times this primary cycle. It has. That's what's happened. Pollsters do the best they can. But this is why I get so mad when pollsters release registered voter polls before elections, especially during an actual general election cycle. By Labor Day, it is your job to try to determine who is going to come out to vote. The results can be dramatically different. Yeah, especially the closer you get to election day, especially. Some college associate degree, big margin for Lake there, 53.5 to 40.4. High school or less, big margin there, 51.7 to 37.7. 4-year undergrads, 49.44 Hobbs. Devastating for Hobbs. Trump lost this group by 10, and we had Trump down by almost 10. So it suggests that Lake is in a much better position. And that's why they're terrified. Did you watch Morning Joe this morning? Did you watch the War Room clip about Morning Joe this morning when I was on War Room? Did you hear them flipping out about Arizona? She misspoke and said Hobbs up by 4. I think she meant that Lake was up by 4 because there's been 3 polls that showed Lake up by 4. Okay. Now we're number 4, by the way. There is a Hobbs plus 3 from CNN. There was never a Hobbs plus 4. There is no Hobbs plus 4. But she was melting down because she's like, this is worse than Trump because she's smoother than Trump. They're scared. Advanced postgrad, 57.2 to 38.5. I'll tell you what, if Lake wins 38.5% or more of the postgrad vote,
when Lake wins.
I mean, Laura, I'm like very confident Kari Lake is going to be the next governor of Arizona. I'm not trying to sow complacency on anybody's behalf. I'm simply saying because, look, liberals did this to Hillary Clinton in 2016, and I actually think it's unfair for Hillary Clinton what they did. What liberals did, because look, this industry is dominated from pollsters to pundits. It's dominated by liberals. Even so-called Republicans are actually liberal. And I think it is, and Laura and I've talked about this a lot. I think it was unfair to Hillary Clinton what they did because that race was actually always rather competitive. It was. And they did her dirty. They really did. All right, let's look at some of the other demographics here.
They lied so much.
They lied. They made her think, and they made her voters think she was a total shoo-in. And that was never the case. Do I have to go back and pull up the 2016 tracker? The only reason why we overstated Trump's support nationally is because we waited for a very typical California and Western dynamic. That's the only reason. Everything else was like really spot on. All you had to do was adjust the share that some of these blue city votes were going to come in as, which overall, what it was is that the urban vote wasn't its correct share in places like California. That's it. And then because that was Hillary Clinton's entire lead. Outside of that, we were right. We would have been right.
But complacency will equal losing.
Yeah, complacency equals losing. So I don't want to do to anybody here. Of course, you are smart to put your foot on the gas and, to full speed ahead until it's over, and, you always run like you're 10 points behind. Always. Amen. I'm just saying that this feels like a assault. Look, guys, in the raw, it was like way overeducated and it was tied.
And that's raw data.
Before we waited for region, right? Which hopefully will help you with education pollsters. If you get geography right, you really shouldn't have to touch education. Maybe a very light, weight if necessary. But for the most part, if you do everything else right, you shouldn't have to. They should be red flags to you, though. All right. There should be a flag. All right. So let's look at it by religion, which I thought was interesting. It's in the bathroom.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I left it there. Sorry, I had to ask Laura. Protestant, other Christian, is an absolutely dominant margin for Kari Lake. 66 to 28, or 65.8 to 27.8. I think what happened here too, because we have a little bit different way, as we've discussed on locals a lot, different way of identifying Hispanic voters. And there's inferred ethnicity on voter file and everything. We of course ask, so we have a little bit different of a way we do it. I'm not going to get into it now, but I think what we did here was find. Do you remember that story about 2 years ago that said that in places like Arizona and Nevada and Florida and Texas, there were a lot of Hispanics who were second and third generation converting to Protestantism. They were becoming more evangelical, less Catholic, overall less Catholic, and that this would have an impact on their vote preference eventually, because Catholics tend to be more liberal than these Protestant other Christians, which at least a good chunk of them will be evangelical. I think what we did here was pick up on some of that, because if you look at the Hispanic margin, Mark Kelly hurt himself with the Rodrigo comment. He did, because Mark Kelly had a not a big lead, but he had a lead with Hispanics in our last poll. He hurt himself with that Rodrigo comment. There's no other way to slice it. I mean, I don't know what else could have done it. He was leading among Hispanics 52-30 in our last poll. Now, I mean, that gap is close 20 points, 30 points. In some cases, reversed. Kerry Lake, I really think both Kerry Lake and Blake Masters, judging by who's going to come out to vote, I really think that Blake Masters and Kerry Lake can win the Hispanic vote. I do, in the state. They're more conservative. They're calling themselves more conservative. And that conservative Hispanic vote preference in the ABC Telemundo poll, that shift, that's real. I see it. If they self-ID as conservative, then, a lot more of them are Protestant than Catholic than they were, compared to like 2 years ago. There's conversions here, and it's all having a role. All right? Anyway, Kerry Lake's still carrying the Catholic vote, 53-41. It's a big deal in a state like Arizona. Let's look by area. We do weight based on region, and it is very common for someone to say they're in a rural area, or a suburban area, but they're really in a rural area. It's very common for people to say, I'm in a suburban area, but not a metro suburban. But most, other pollsters, exit pollsters, we would consider a lot of these people to be urban. All right. And really, the urban vote is huge in the state of Arizona. So don't let this fool you a little bit. The margins is what matters. That 51-40 margin in urban Arizona for Katie Hobbs is not good, especially since she's losing the suburbs by 5 or losing the rural areas by 30. The rural vote could be a little bit misleading. There are rural areas in Maricopa, but because some people say they live in Maricopa, they say they're in like a suburb. I'm in a suburb. I live in Maricopa County, but you're not. You're in a rural area. And they mess up. They just do, Would you be able to accurately identify where you are? Some people listening right now probably would be honest and say no. It's something easier for others. American suburbs when you see one. But some of those metro areas in Phoenix, they think, no, I'm a suburb. You're not. You're a metro area. All right. So don't let that fool you any. Big deal. It's a big deal. And to compare that, by the way, to the Senate, Masters is carrying the suburbs, but he's only carrying them 47-45. He needs to boost that up significantly. And he needs to bring his urban share to at least 40-41. This will happen if he does better among those undecided voters in Pima. This will happen. And in Maricopa. Both of those things will happen. In the end, I think the lion's share of this rural vote is going to Blake Masters. I think we can all agree on that. All right. So the only question is whether he can modestly increase his margin in urban Arizona, which would almost all come from Maricopa, and then also in suburban areas, which also, by the way, a lot of that would come from Maricopa. But there are places in Gila and Greenlee where he needs to pick up the pace too. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to governor, though, for a second. And let's look at method. We talk about this because you need to understand going to be on election day. Ah, crap. We'll come back to it in a second. Listen, on election day, you are going to see what you saw during the primary, which is that there will be this big vote for like a Karen Taylor Robson, for instance. All right, which, you know, Carrie Lake did much better with the election day vote. It's going to happen, folks. All right, so it's going to be this like very uncomfortable situation for Republicans until the rest of this vote comes in. And then we'll see whether or not there'll be enough for Republicans to catch up. In the case of Carrie Lake, I do it's going to happen. If the vote is not huge for Hobbs, the early vote, if it's closer than I expect it to be, then she's in deep trouble. The Arizona Republican Party, and not just Hobbs, but Democrats across the board, Kelly as well. The Arizona Republican Party has been telling people, instructing them not to do, you know, something. They don't want to be in this position, but voters are having a hard time with it. All right, but we'll talk about that in a second. I'm about to sneeze. God, I hope not. All right. At least we had some bargain buying this week, folks, but we all know that we just had the worst quarter in like decades, 2 decades last quarter. The last time we saw, by the way, you know, we have war, inflation, 30 trillion in debt. It's looking like 08 all over again. Millions of Americans watch their retirement savings vanish, while those who invested in physical gold and silver were protected. Quiet, Laura. Every time we talk about gold, I'll tell you after. And if you have, you know, an IRA, 401k savings, you could be at risk again. Right now, thousands of Americans are using an IRS loophole to add physical gold and silver to their retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com to get a free gold IRA kit and learn how thousands are protecting their retirement savings with gold and silver. Protect your savings, and you could get 10 grand or more in free silver to do it. Goldco has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, thousands of customer reviews, and they've helped place over $1 billion in precious metals. We could be looking at a recession worse than 2008, folks. Don't wait. Call Goldco today. And you can go right now and go visit tpplikesgold.com. TPP, of course, for the People's Pundit, tpplikesgold.com today. All right, look, I'll tell you the story. And for those who didn't hear it on What Are the Odds? I used to, and I, of course, came from financials, and I used to do IPOs and stuff. And I was in the middle of this like really successful IPO, but we knew there was something rocky going on with the market. And Laura's buy gold, buy gold. In the end, we did. I just didn't do it right away. And every time she hears gold or silver, I have to get it because it did bust a 2,400% gain. It's crazy. And actually, silver was 2,400, I think. Gold was 16. I may have that backwards. Yes, silver was 2,400. Gold was 1,300. And I mean, this was just one of those things, men. You're married. It's one of those things that you will never hear the end of. Doesn't matter how good you did on that other stock. It doesn't matter if it split once, split twice, split 3 times. It doesn't matter. You missed out on that because the wifey told you to do it. You're never going to hear the end of it. Never. All right. Let's go back to our handy dandy crosstabs, shall we? We shall. Let me just make sure I'm going to the right one. Yep, I did. Okay. Let's pop this up and talk about this. Let's look at this first. And I'll zoom in. Let me see if I can zoom in, guys. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And first, let's go to voting method and go by party. Okay. Can you see that much better? Yes. I mean, it's not great, but it's certainly better, right? Whoa, see? That takes it off the screen. Absentee ballot early mail. And what do I mean by that is simple. Let me read you exactly how it was worded on the questionnaire. Oh, God, as soon as I close it. an email comes in, gets in the way, and I click on the email. What we did was basically ask people which pertained to them as far as how they intended to vote. Vote intention, it can be called. We like to call it vote method because vote intention can get a little bit confusing sometimes with whether or not they intend to vote for someone. What's your vote intention? I'm going to vote for Biden, right? We do it a little, we call it voting method. We did change that over the years. We said, which of the following applies to you? You plan to vote by absentee ballot and we'll mail it in early. You plan to vote by absentee ballot early, but we'll drop it off on election day. Or you plan to vote on election day. And then the responses we made smaller here for the interest of cross-stamps. But the first answer, response, of course, plan to vote by absentee ballot and mail it in early. The second one was plan to vote by absentee ballot and drop it off on election day. And then the third was I would just plan to vote on election day. All right. That 32.2% is huge. Obviously coming from Republicans and Republican-leaning independents. 35% of independents say they will vote on election day. 41% of Republicans say they will vote on election day. Now, take a look at the second choice. Absentee ballot, election day, drop. I plan to vote by absentee ballot and drop it off on election day. From what I understand, the Arizona Republican Party is telling people not to do this. Why? Because it takes forever to count. These are the votes that Maricopa will take 4 days to count. You won't get started on them until like Thursday. I understand these are what we like to call, Charlie Kirk gave him the name when I was on the show, and I thought he brilliantly characterized them. These are the 2,000 Mules voters. They don't trust the U.S. Postal Service to handle their ballot correctly. Maybe some guy knows, I think this guy's going to vote Republican, tears up the ballot. It happens. Don't let them tell you it doesn't. It does. All right, Postal Service workers have been in trouble for this before. Right. And then secondly, maybe they think when it gets there, it's not going to be processed right or handled correctly. So they want to drop it off on election day because Arizona has stupid election laws, not like Florida, which is the gold standard. You can do this in Florida. There's nothing wrong with doing this. Laura and I did this all the time. But when I walked into the supervisor of election, because we didn't have drop boxes, when we walked into the SOE, guess what they did? Signature verified right away. It didn't have to be done after the election. It was done right and there. Put in a pile, and because all of the ballots that were already arriving early, which are signature verified, they were basically being processed and verified at that time before the election, weeks before in some cases. Big chunks of votes already processed. The ones that you would drop off like this, even if it was on election day, no problem. They're going to walk you, they're going to verify it. You can either leave it in their bin and they'll do it, or they'll walk you to the damn machine and you'll feed the ballot into the machine right then and there. You'll watch it count the vote. You'll get a little ticket. She'll give you the sticker, I voted. Have a nice day, Rich. Bye. Arizona's dumb. They don't do that. They're going to signature verify 2 to 4 days later. It's ridiculous. Honestly, you know why so many people are fighting for a stupid, modest change like that can make our elections go much smoother and quicker? Because that means the end of the drop box. That's the end of the drop box. Which, by the way, more than 60% of the American public wants anyway. But even Republicans in Georgia didn't have the stomach to do it. The spine.
It's amazing because Nadler.
Okay, speak up. Speak up.
I was just saying the Democrat Nadler, he was highly against it. I don't remember what year it was.
Oh, years ago.
Years.
Yeah, I remember that in New York.
Talking about how it was just.
Whoa! Just be careful. Just be careful.
Oh, just talking about.
I didn't jump off. I did. I was going after an hour, but I did.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to have this segment.
Yeah.
It's hard to have this segment, honestly. If you don't. And YouTube and make everyone go to Rumble. By the way, look what happened to Rakita Law the other day. Go to Rumble. Go to Rumble. I know, I understand. Give them time. Their features will catch up. Go to Rumble, please. Look what happened to Rakita. It was mass reporting. He didn't do anything wrong. Their system is set up, and this is what's happening to us. It's a mass report. And some dude who doesn't even really understand what you're saying in the dialogue video reviews, they don't care about the appeal process. They're not going to go. You never will win an appeal from YouTube. Very, very, very rarely. We won the one battle, remember, over the mass. Remember that?
Yeah.
And that was it. You rarely do it. If you're mass reported, and you're done. All right, you can see here 44% of Republicans still do intend to vote. These will be these older voters that Blake Masters needs to work toward, and others, and more moderate ones in Scottsdale, stuff like that, right? 44% do intend still to just get their absentee ballot and mail it. 73% of Democrats intend to do so. 58% of independents intend to do so. That margin with that 58% of independents and other is going to matter. Why? Because these people cannot break overwhelmingly for the Democrat unless you want a narrative that the race is over and Fox News to call it before they finish counting votes. That's what will happen. Now, I'm showing you this so the world, other than Steve Kornacki and I, who are the only ones who seem to understand this, or the only ones who do what we do, who seem to understand this, and honestly, and he's MSNBC, but the guy is a straight shooter. He's the only other one. Everyone else's decision desk is going to be making ludicrous comments and assumptions. Okay? They're not looking at what we're looking at. It's a very clear pattern here that's getting worse. Only 41% of, well, not only, excuse me, only 44% of Republicans intend to drop it off early. 41% intend to vote on Election Day. Only 19% of Democrats tend to vote on Election Day. By the way, I don't know if you remember, but those Maricopa tallies on Election Day, the drop-offs were huge. It was 8% Democrat drop-off ballot on Election Day in Maricopa County. Look at what it is now in the second option, which is that absentee ballot, but Election Day drop. It's 8% Democrat. Isn't that crazy? 8% other, but 15% Republican. I'm going to show you the margins in the governor's race, okay? On Election Day, only 19% of Democrats will vote and 35% of independents will vote. There will be a big Election Day turnout. So what used to be easily 80-20 could very well be 66-33 this year. What do I mean by that? Arizona was at least 80% absentee ballot vote, and 20% on a good Election Day turnout day, it would be that. It usually was like 12 to 15% Election Day, and the rest was absentee ballot voting. This time, don't be surprised if it's like 66% mail, 33% Election Day, or 70-30. Either way, it's still a big change. Now, let's go to voting method. Let's go to the governor race. Look at this margin. Katie Hobbs is winning the absentee early vote that will count, that will be reported first. She is winning that 61-33. That 10% who said, I'm going to vote by mail, but I'm going to drop it off on Election Day, which Republicans are trying to get people not to do. Kari Lake is winning that 67-24. Then the Election Day vote, Kari Lake is winning 70% of. This is bigger than her lead over Karen Taylor Robson in the primary. These are huge margins. Dobbs getting 23% of that vote. It's massive. Massive difference. How do you think this is going to come across on election night? Oh my God. Right? Oh my God. It's going to be basically a close to even race after they count the early vote, which is going to look big, and everyone's going to go, Kari, are you going to concede? Remember that?
Yeah.
Kari, are you going to concede? Even though she winds up winning by 5 points. Kari, are you going to concede? Why haven't you called Karen Taylor Robson yet, Kari? Are you going to concede?
No, because she lost.
And by the way, Blake was still up in the early vote, and they didn't call Bronovich or Jim Lamont and say, you guys are going to concede? Isn't that funny?
It's irony, because they're petrified.
And then we're going to wait. No, they're scared to death of her and Mark Fincham and Abraham Hamaday. Yes, you know what? They're scared of Blake Masters too, but it's really the Senate and D.C. is afraid of Blake Masters. Yeah. The establishment on both sides in Arizona even though most of the moderate vote, the establishment vote, came home to Kari Lake. We can show you by party in a second, which we will. It's not the same dynamic that we're seeing in the Senate. Blake Masters still has struggled to consolidate that vote. Kari and Blake should be tied at the hip almost, for the next 4 weeks. They should be. And Donald Trump's going back out there. That should help him. But Kari Lake is winning a vote that Blake Masters is not winning, a Republican vote. And I'll show you. Election day is going to be overwhelming. So you're going to see this big vote. Kari, you're going to concede. And then on election day, they're going to count that vote. And it's going to be a big vote. Big vote. And by the way, they don't always count all the election day votes on election night, which is in Arizona, which is ridiculous, but they don't. They go home at a certain time. And that race is going to tighten dramatically. And then depending on Kari's lead, we're going to be waiting. We may be waiting for that last 10% to call. Why? Because other than Steve Kornacki and I, we're the only ones who admit there is a major difference between those who vote like this early and those who vote like this early. We tried explaining this in Pennsylvania. We tried explaining this in Arizona. We have done this now state after state after state. And I'm throwing praise at this guy because he's being honest and he's the only one who's honest. The other ones, look, even Laura Ingraham, folks, lied to everybody. She called a magical batch of votes in Maricopa that didn't exist for her friend Karen Taylor Robson and then never corrected herself and led everyone who was watching Fox to believe that this vote was going to break like this vote. When everyone who knows better, which is apparently 3 of us, Charlie Kirk, Steve Kornacki, and myself, because Charlie was looking at my poll and we had asked it before. Yeah, Stan was on the air with him. And he's like, Rich, you asked people how you intended to vote. Those votes are not going to be Robson's vote. No kidding. No kidding. And it poured out. And by the way, we knew that was going to be the case with Oz against McCormick. And McCormick won the vote statewide early, 9 points. And everyone thought that those late arrivers were going to do the same. They were banking it on that and then what was remaining in Allegheny of election day. It was so Trumpy that Oz actually won the election day vote in his backyard in Allegheny County, and those late arriving ballots broke for Oz. That's going to happen here. I can't stress this enough, guys, because I don't want to see your tweets. Oh my God, can she make up this margin? What's happening here? I don't want to see your tweets. I don't want to see them. I just spent 30 minutes going over this with you. All right?
We should just refer them every time they tweet, go
episode 295.
Episode
295, 1245 to 130, please.
Have a nice day.
Because I know what you're going to hear on the mainstream media. Let me let you in on a little secret. They're not that smart. They don't really know better. So a lot of the gaps of what they don't know gets filled in with wishful thinking. All right. What do you think Dave Wasserman is constantly changing his mind on Twitter until he puts out his race calls? If you remember, go back and look right now. Go look at his tweets during the Arizona primary. Oh, there's no way Kari Lake can make up this margin. This is almost over. Something's got to change real quick here. Okay. He doesn't know. He doesn't realize it. He's going on other people's work. He's looking at data from other people's work that he doesn't fully comprehend. And the same is true. If you think there's like a bunch of brainiacs at the decision desk at Fox News, you're wrong. I can tell you for a fact, direct knowledge, they thought Hillary Clinton was winning North Carolina in 2016. Hands down. They thought Biden would take it in 2020. They thought Florida was over in 2016. Frank Luntz went on and said, let me be clear. And the decision desk nodded in agreement. Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president. They don't know. They're not that smart. So don't fall for it. Just woosah.
Episode 2.
And Democrats, don't let them dupe you into believing something's going to happen for you that's not going to happen. I feel equally bad for both parties' voters. All right, let's look at by party now because we done did that good enough, right? There is no chance. By the way, you see that Carrie Lake has basically consolidated her base more than Blake Masters has, and there are more Republicans that are undecided than there are Democrats, which is, again, also a reverse. Carrie Lake is not going to lose any more than 7% of the Republican vote. That's just not going to happen. She's pulling a chunk of Democrats from Katie Hobbs. That is well within the sampling error on both, well within the subgroup sampling error within both. It's essentially a wash, which leaves independents. Katie Hobbs would have to win them considerably by double digits, like Joe Biden. He won them by 12. Katie Hobbs is only winning them by 2. And the remaining undecided, I'm going to show you by education, doesn't suggest the rest are going to go her way. That's why I said the levy could actually break in the governor's race and Hobbs could get stomped. All right? Stomped. I think a 5-point win for Lake is easy if the stars, not easy, I don't want to say that, easily imaginable and even modest in a good Republican cycle. I think she could win by 8 or 10 if the levy breaks. Oh, yeah. Laura, I do. Oh, yes.
No, but I'm saying imagine that.
Because, what's left? Let's look. It's Republican, it's independent, and it is not educated. And I don't want to say I hate that word. It's not overly educated. Let's use that word. Overly educated. 6% of some college and a 4-year degree is not equal. Why? Because some college is a bigger group than 4-year degree. So it's like asking you, what's 5% of 100? What's 5% of 200? Okay? The 5% of 200 is bigger than 5% of 100. So this 6% that remains undecided in some college associate, which is a Lake margin, margin that's much bigger than the Hobbs margin is for 4-year degree. All right? When you do it, this disproportionately, these two middle ones, whoops, I can't do it, but these two middle ones, disproportionately for Carrie Lake as far as what is undecided. And then advanced degrees, which is obviously Katie Hobbs' best group, all right? There's only 3.4% of them left. And this is why I like to leave count up, because you can see what I mean by that. 6% of some college on raw count is 21. 6% of 4-year degree is only 15 votes. So let's pretend like we're working with very small numbers here. If Katie Hobbs does win the 4-year degree, but only by about 5 points, what is she going to net out of 15? Right. If Carrie Lake wins the remaining 21 votes by 14 points, is she going to net more than Katie Hobbs netted in the 4-year? Yeah. Yes, she is. Almost twice as many. She's going to wipe that net out and then add some. This high school and less is a 52-38 margin. It's also significant with that 11%. That is, let's call it 19 votes. If she wins that by a 13-point margin, is she going to net more than Katie Hobbs is going to net if she wins 5 votes by a near 20% margin? Yup. So what's undecided really just suggests that Carrie Lake can grow her lead. Katie Hobbs has to hope these voters don't vote. No, I'm serious. That's her only hope.
It's a dream.
It can happen, but it's like...
if people become too complacent.
Yeah, absolutely. If people become too complacent, Laura said. That's a great way to put it. All right.
We say complacency equals losing.
Complacency definitely equals losing, without a doubt. All right. Let me do a quick. I'm going to need a drink of water. We're going to take a quick minute and a half break here, and then when we come back, we'll do questions. I think I went over everything, pretty decent. All right. When we come back, we'll do questions after a quick break and a word from our sponsors. Take a 30-second countdown, folks. Take a breath. Boy, that sounded awfully ominous, didn't it? Ominous. Woo! All right, let's do it. You know the deal, folks. Economy is in the crapper. There are warning signs everywhere. All right. Food shortages could be coming even in the U.S. Are you kidding me? Drought, inflation, new policies, all pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits like Laura and I have done for our family. It's not ordinary food. Talking good for 25 years, super survival food that's hand-packed in a family-owned facility right in the US of A. These kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, and they stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners that you can make in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile for your family like Laura and I have done today. While you're on their website, surfing all their fantastic products, maybe you want to get their 72-hour food kit to try out, or maybe some of their other goodies that they have there. Don't forget on checkout to use promo code TPP10, TPP10 to get 10% off your entire order today. All right. Also, let's just run through while we have this opportunity. All right. So we can get right to your questions. Last time the economy looked like this, folks, the stock market tanked 50%. The US dollar lost 46% of its value and the price of oil quadrupled. Yet, while the US economy collapsed, inflation ran through the roof. Gold shot up 1,300%. Silver rocketed 2,400. And there's the evil eye from Laura. So if history repeats itself, we could see it happen again. Can you afford to miss what could be the biggest gold and silver boom of our generation? I won't. That's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver, you could get $10,000 in or more in free silver just for doing it. This is a rare opportunity. So don't miss what could be your best opportunity to protect your retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com. That's tpplikesgold.com. All right. It's like, I was like, as soon as I'm like, all right, yeah. I knew it. I knew I'd get that eye every damn commercial break. All right. I already told him the story when you were on your thing. I already told him the story. We don't need to go over it.
Oh, you don't want to relive it?
Oh my God. The first question, which wasn't the first question. It's just the first question I saw from Derek. How does Rich feel about Ben Sass becoming president of US? Derek obviously knows I'm a Gator. Not good. Not good at all. Larry was cool. Ben Sass doesn't belong at the University of Florida.
No.
He doesn't represent Gator Nation. He has nothing in common with Gator Nation. And for those of you who made that stupid harebrained decision, what makes you think he's going to represent Gator Nation and reflect its values when he couldn't even represent his own state's values in the U.S. Senate?
My God.
That's how I feel about Ben Little Man Sass becoming the president of U.S. Damn. Jesus. The land of Tim Tebow? And me, the People's Pundit? This is what you're going to do?
It's like an insult.
Don't call me during Christmas for your donation this year. I'm not kidding.
I know it.
You hired Ben Sass. You lost my money. Could you make row variables like Biden's approval and Senate preference also column variables in the Arizona poll crosstabs? Yes, I can. I was under the gun, Adam Evictus. Absolutely, I can. And in fact, I do what I'll make them because I get a lot of questions. But I tell you that what we saw were those strongly disapprovals. Those he's a locals comment, right? Yeah, Adam, that will be for locals. But I mean, I will tell everybody that the remaining undecided still does overwhelmingly disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing. The somewhat disapprove is more split, but you'll see, just like I was talking about with education before, the strongly disapprove is still disproportionately worse for the Democratic candidates, because even though a lot of them have now decided and they're going to vote Republican, that's what happened. As I freaking told you what happened. They weren't going to vote for someone else, and they weren't going to be undecided. They were going to vote Republican, because that is what happens, and especially in first-term incumbent midterms. And there is still more out there that disapprove. And also, the problem that Democrats have is that those who like somewhat approve, that's much bigger than strongly. Strongly is not there, even though Biden's approval rating rose about 4 points in our poll in Arizona this month. It rose about 4 points. It's still abysmal at 43%, and most of that is made up of somewhat approve. They are not at all or slightly or moderately enthusiastic to vote, and they are unlikely by disproportionate share or less likely to vote. So they're lower propensity, and that is, again, to be expected. And if these fake-ass forecasters were being honest with you right now, then they would tell you that when people are disenfranchised with their own president of their own party, they don't vote as much as they would if they were super happy with that, super excited. Think about Barack Obama in 2010. They weren't happy with Barack Obama. They didn't vote for him, even though they still somewhat approved him. They didn't go out and vote for his candidates. Yet in 2012, it was time to defend him. They did. 2014, same thing, right? Same thing happened to George Bush. Same thing happened to Bill Clinton. Same thing happened to Donald Trump. Same thing happened to freaking everyone. Happened to Ronald Reagan. It will happen to Joe Biden. This is nuts. That's why I applaud Sean Trendy for doing that article the other day. Like, look, it's much more likely that the levee will break than it is that this will be some kind of a historical midterm. There has been one of them. And he included both incumbent midterms and second-term midterms, or first-term incumbent and second-term incumbent midterms. And that everybody knows that there is a serious difference between the two. All right? All right. Has Rich ever explained how the margin for error number comes up with the polls? You know, it's a crazy... I want to do educational videos on basic terminology like that, so I'm going to leave it to that. But I will say this, Jay, that the traditional use of the term margin of error is incorrect in probably 98% of the polls that you're seeing conducted now. If it's a mixed survey poll that isn't full-on random digital dial, completely randomization, then margin of error is not the same as a sampling error or a confidence interval. All right, if it's an all-on, like for instance, YouGov, they'll give you a sampling error. They're trying to like go somewhere in the middle with this or something. It's not a sampling error. It's a confidence interval. Same thing with Reuters and others. It's 100% opt-in. Opt-in. That's a confidence interval. If you have mixed mode, you should be giving overall sampling errors. If to do your best you can with online components that may be opt-in. Even our online is randomized. So but randomization goes out the window when you use different data sources. Every time I go to the voter file, I go to Arizona. I know I want to reach certain people, right? So it's technically not fully randomized. It's at best, I think it's fair to call it targeted randomized. So even if it's 100% phone, I'm still not going to use the term margin of error because it's not RDD, random digital dial of just a list of everybody. We're going immediately to people we know are registered to vote. Well, that already starts with randomization, the laws of randomization. So it is a much deeper answer that I really have long time been meaning to do a video on, and I'll do my best to do that soon. It's just that, during an election, it's tough, but will we ever get to the bottom of the last, in Arizona with Lake in there? That's why I'll just leave it at this, man. That's why they're so scared of Mark Fincham and Kerry Lake winning. And then if Abraham Hamadeh, which you're going to see the polls for soon, he's doing fantastic. If he wins, being the attorney general, the top cop, prosecutes on the state, they're terrified. Let me just leave it at that. Do you think they're scared? for no reason? No.
They shaking in their boots.
Trump is going again to Pennsylvania. Please, Fetterman is sick. I know, but we live in a hyper-partisan era. And even though I think we're at a point right now where just nobody wants to put Oz in the lead, I think nobody wants to be first to give Oz a lead. I think that's what's happening right now. I know Spencer and Emerson and that Fetterman +2 reeks of typical Spencer Kimball at Emerson College. Like, I think I'm safer if I just do Fetterman +2. He probably could see Oz was surging. Come on, Spence. Come on. You know it. And he didn't want it. That's why I want to poll Pennsylvania again. I want to poll Arizona again before the election. I'd love to poll Ohio. It's just that if I had the choice of revisiting another state, I don't think I have to revisit Wisconsin. I'll say that. I think Wisconsin's over. Will it be close? Yeah, it's Wisconsin. But I think Ron Johnson and Tim Michels are going to win. I think Tony Evers is done. He's down and he's running out of votes. And I think that Ron Johnson is always the underdog. And he started to even pull ahead. I think we had something to do with that. I think us dropping that Johnson +3. And then also the other gold standard knew we were in the field and didn't want to make a fool of themselves. You might notice that they were the last poll to have Tony Evers with up, even though it was only up barely. They had Tony Evers up by like a point. All right. That's been it since then. There's been like 5 polls and Tony Evers is down. By subscribing to locals and following Rich, my household is happier. My husband is a retired pathologist, and I didn't want to say his name out loud. If it was and medical researcher trained in biostatistics. He now follows Rich closely because of his data collection methods, transparency, and professionalism. We love you guys. That's what it's all about right there. Right there, too, if you want to be part of the community, best community on the internet. I'm telling you. peoplespundit.locals.com. How does Rich feel? Oh, I already read that. Herschel Walker just fired his campaign director. Well, it's about time. I don't think Walker's done. I don't buy the Fabrizio poll. I have to, and I'll probably do it Monday, guys, when we have Carrie Lake on. We're going to have a special on Monday because...
No,
Wednesday. Sorry. I thought we were doing the Monday special.
No, it's on your calendar, sir.
I'm sorry. Then next week, at some point, maybe I'll still do a Monday special. But at some point, I think that we need to have this discussion because something is going on behind the scenes that you guys all need to know about. And the establishment, absolutely, the establishment, Republican establishment, is absolutely trying to sabotage candidates. They are. And we know they are. And there's a pattern. They're even using their establishment pollsters to come up with what are padded numbers, showing them down more than everybody knows they are, so they could give Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell an excuse to pull out of their race. I may blow up a very well-known person who basically, I know he told this person hoping it would get to me. And what he did was connect a lot of dots and made a lot of sense of some of the stuff that I was seeing. And I'm talking about an elected official. I'm talking about somebody you guys know. And I'm talking about somebody who would absolutely be in the loop. There's something dirty going on here. They're trying to sabotage Trump's support ahead of 2024. They don't want a big MAGA majority. They don't.
Of course not.
And they have no intention of supporting Donald Trump in 2024. The establishment is trying to use him right now for the best of that they can, but not be surrounded by people who are loyal to him. And then they're going to stab him in the back, and they're going to try to force somebody else down your throat in 2024. And until I get into it more, you may take a wild guess. All right. Yes, I will be live on election night. Yep. We're just deciding what it is we're going to do. We may be doing our own, no joke, People's Pundit election night show where we basically share feeds with other news organizations that don't have decision desks or don't have commentators. But it's a lot to put on. So they're going to have to pay for it. It's that simple. If not, I'll just give you a show on my own. All right. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of money. We put up a lot of money to bring you guys, the results as fast as we do. We may even have exit polling. I'm not kidding. So, we're either going to do this on our own and, you guys, during the show can tip us, help us out, whatever you want to do. Or eventually that's the goal anyway. I want the People's Pundit election show to be syndicated throughout news outlets. You can turn to Rav and see us on Rav. You could turn to the Daily Wire, who wants to do something, for election. And you can see it on the Daily Wire, whoever it may be. I don't care if Fox News wants it. It would be a better decision desk if you bought the license to stream it. All right, but that's eventually what it's going to come down to. Because we now, from multiple election cycles, have given far better coverage of elections than the mainstream media. And alternative media wants to get into election forecasting, then this is the best, most collaborative way to do it. And by the way, the cheapest for you. Because let me break your brain right now. If you're an alternative news site and you think you're going to go build your own maps like NBC News, you want to know how much that map is? $100,000. You got that? If you were Lake, where would you go to win real big to throw it in Hobbs's face? That's kind of a complicated question, although a good question. I would go in the areas of Maricopa where I need to make sure I don't slip where I am, or I want to build up on where I am. You're going to do great in certain areas of Maricopa, northwest, even in the southwest, by the way. Scottsdale area and some of those LDS areas, I would shore that up. But that's certainly a more complicated question. But yeah, I mean, most of it would be in Maricopa, and I also would make a play for Pima. A hard play. I'd want 42% in Pima. 42. So I could really not just win, but be like, that's how it's done. Stay down. That's how.
And don't come for my state again.
Don't come for me ever, or my state, or my voters ever again. I'm gonna I beat you so bad, your grandchildren literally are gonna feel it. All right. So do you think Lee Zeldin has a good chance to win? Listen, there has been multiple polls now that show that this is a close race. I do think, Robert, at least it's close. I don't know if it's 2 points, but it's close. The Attorney General's race is closer than it should be. There has also been, I don't know if you guys saw it, but they're not a great pollster, CNN, even though they're from New York. There's just, they're the pollster for the New York Times. They blew every battleground state last cycle. They didn't call a single one correctly. All right. They pulled a bunch of congressional districts, not only the state, and Lee Zeldin was ahead, even where Republicans were behind in the congressional districts. Even when the Republican congressional candidate was down a little bit to the Democrat, Lee Zeldin was up over Hochul. So some of these are battleground districts, and some of these are not so battleground districts. And yet Lee Zeldin was still ahead. She's right with scandal, and he really has been running, a crime campaign. It's just, I would be more aggressive. It's just hard for someone like Lee Zeldin to be aggressive. And then the other real challenge for you guys in New York, and same thing with California, is that you're losing your potential working base. And you're being left with fewer and fewer not insane people. Okay, so no, I'm serious. So it's really hard because Florida has a lot of your sane people now. And especially since COVID, we know that it's mathematically proven. It's not my opinion. All right. Why is Florida continuing to get redder and redder, even though all of these people? Oh my God, I wanted to show them that. And now it's 1:50 and I don't have time.
So Monday special.
I will. Yes, I'm going to go over in detail place of birth and generational differences in voting behavior in Arizona. If you are Kerry Lake and Blake Masters, then I'm telling you, you don't care if people came from California to New York. These are people fleeing the madness of those states, what they view to be the madness and unlivability of those states. Their cost of living is too high. They came to Arizona. And guess what? They're voting Republican. They're voting for you. Even people who were born outside the U.S., they had a kid those kids are voting for you. I know that that sounds crazy. It's happening. You know who's not? Second generation white people, educated white. They're your problem. All right. So I will show you this in great detail. All right. Damn, it's great. I'm so glad that, Connecticut 5 have a shot to flip. It was moved to toss up on Politico. I always thought a place like Connecticut 5 had a chance. If the levee breaks, Connecticut 5 is going to go. Or that would be an example of what would go. Certainly, there's another one in Illinois that's like that. Right now, the safe thing is to say, that Oregon 4, those all lean Democrat. That's a safe thing to say, but it's not really. Look, the Republican lead on the generic ballot. Did you guys see it? It went back to 4 points in Rasmussen now. Insider advantage, they had it Democrat +1. Republicans had a big lead, and then it swung hard to Democrats over the summer. Now they're back to Republican +3. That's why, again, I hate to keep pitching it, but share the public polling project. Go to bigdatapoll.com right now. Scroll down to the bottom. Share it far and wide. We are probably halfway to, let me look. We could be halfway to this thing being funded at this point. It was like 44% yesterday when I looked. Let me look. 45.01. We're close. We need another generic ballot, at least one more. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to get a second one between now and then. I don't know. But I've been trying to make calls, to alleviate the burden from you guys. But, the bottom line is if ABC, with Republican +5, if Rasmussen's right, Trafalgar's right, an insider advantage at 3 points. That 3 to 5 point is when the levee breaks. Okay. 1 to 2, Republicans are going to get like, a 225 to 30 seat majority, something like that. Not big. Maybe 235 if it's on the high end and they do better with certain candidates. They get 3 to 5 points, as we showed you with the analysis of the Biden 52 plus districts below and up. There's just a lot more targets in the Republican column than the left. You see that happen, that 3 to 5 point move, and that's it. The levee could break. And that's when, forget about it. CT5, others be in big trouble. Democrats can be in big trouble. It happened to Republicans in 2018. All of a sudden, people were looking at Kentucky and being like, oh my God, this woman could beat him. Yes, she could have. Democrats actually didn't even take her serious enough. Maybe another 1.5 million could have put her over. In some districts, they go. Did it look like men would be more likely to vote in this poll? Do you think that men are more likely to vote this year nationwide? Yes, that's actually a really good question. Let's go to voting likelihood in Wisconsin. I do believe men are going to outvote women in the state of Wisconsin. They will be 51% of the electorate. Women will be 49%. In the state of Arizona, voting likelihood, let me go to gender. Actually, they were about even in the state of Arizona. They're about even, but it'll be 49% male, 51% female. But basically, in a lot of these other places and nationally, when we polled nationally, men on, as a rule of thumb, were more likely to vote than women. Agree about Sass. Do you think Ricketts will appoint himself as a replacement? That's a good question, and they have really weird rules like Oklahoma when it comes to that. So we'll have to see. What do you think? What do you make of Trafalgar's poll showing New York gubernatorial and we went over that? Will Tashi James go down? She's a very unlikable person. Do I still have it? I mean, for those who don't know who we're talking about here, looks like I did get rid of it. I had it loaded up. Very, very unlikable person. I think there are real movements among non-whites that they really pander to. They need them. And if that was to happen in New York, like it did, by the way, in New Jersey, she definitely could be in trouble. And it's not just Trafalgar that's showing that race close. Both races close. It's not. Does Darren Bailey have a chance in Illinois? Yeah, I've always said that. The only poll you'll see recently, which is a poll I would seriously suggest you take with a grain of salt now that I have. Look, Fabrizio and Lee usually have done good work. They only have Bailey down by 5. But watch the special next week and you'll hear why I'm telling you to take it with a grain. All right, because it does seem to me that depending on who pays the bills, the margins change. And that's a serious problem for me. Also, what's the ancestry of those who are still undecided in Arizona? Who has the advantage based on this? The white vote was really, really close. Latinos are more undecided because, black voters, Asian, and others, they don't make up that much. White vote was about 10% undecided in the governor's race. Kerry Lake is the only Republican, significantly carrying the white vote. Blake Masters was carrying it by 5 in our last poll, and now it's even. He was doing much better among Hispanics. So Hispanics are more, as a percentage, they're more undecided, but because they're not as much as the white vote, as far as raw vote, it's 5-1 white. And I have to tell you, looking at the rest of the demographics and looking at them in totality, I think these are Republican-leaning white voters. I think that all of the liberal white vote is decided, and that's why the white vote is close. And I also think that that is the case in Nevada, the poll we conducted in Nevada. The white vote looks too close in these polls. In Arizona, it can be close. It can. But in Nevada, it's typically not. It's possible it will be less the margin for Republicans that hasn't been in the past, and they're going to win off the backs of Hispanics, which that's what my polling is showing me. That's what it's telling me is going to happen. The white vote will be closer, but Hispanics will push Republicans over the edge in these seats. Yeah. So that's a really good question. Right now, the undecideds in Arizona definitely look better for Republicans. They do. How much will Kemp outrun Walker? I want to poll this again. We had Kemp outrunning Walker by 6 points, I think, in our last poll. I do. Georgia's the other one. Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona are the 3 polls that I want to re-poll because we clearly had Walker was a favorite. He was. I need to know whether or not that's hurt him really bad. Can we just call Carrie the MAGA queen? She is the MAGA queen. Mark my words. I think it's obviously a good chance she will be the next governor of Arizona. And I think when people see her govern, they will realize that she actually is the heir, the governor. I have met them both. Trust me on this. Make your own decision. Make your own decision. But you give Carrie a chance because I really do believe that is the case. Carrie has never had to explain herself on trade or foreign policy. She was very much as Trumpy as you can get. I once upon a time was a Democrat. Now I think they have lost their damn minds. Donald Trump, too, was at one time aligned with the Democratic Party on a lot of issues from abortion to healthcare. He never was aligned with them on trade and stuff like that. He never was aligned with, well, that's not true because once upon a time, Democrats were against illegal immigration and thought that it hurt the working man and woman. Bernie Sanders, for crying out loud, was a champion of anti-illegal immigration until the era of Trump. Then he bent over like he always does. That's why we call him Bend Over Bernie. I think that Carrie's story and Carrie's conversion makes her more authentic. I don't recall Carrie ever being friends with Kevin McCarthy. But we'll see. They're going to try and push Pence. Yeah. Are they going to? Yes, absolutely. Pence really does believe he can win. I mean, I know it's crazy. I know it's nuts. There is absolutely no, there's no evidence, but you get bit by the bug and it's a shame for him because he was the heir and he blew it. Do we know anything about regarding the gubernatorial election in Kansas? Kansas is always screwy. The polling is always screwy. It always looks close, and technically it can. There are some Democrats who can. Yeah, Patrick, you're perfect. So I would give it. Look, Kansas is going to go most likely the way Kansas is expected to go, but there is some. I've talked. I think I just talked about this actually on Wednesday. That there is this progressive like element to Kansas. Some Peter Navarro and I talked about this on War Room when we went down the list of battleground districts. There is this progressive undertone. It's really populist, but during the progressive era, blurred the lines because they wanted the more populism to be synonymous with them. And there's a long history of that because of labor and farmers. So it is also true that some of these supposed ruby red states aren't really ruby red. Their establishments are rhino as rhino gets. Look at, Chris Kobach, for instance. Look at that. Look at the fights he's had. They're all very similar. Look who comes from the Dakotas. I fled New York to Miami. And here, Patrick, this is perfect what Patrick says here. I fled New York to Miami. And when I go to the local bar, it's all people in my demo who hate the Dem crazies in New York and who are big Trumpers. It's a meme now. You are textbook. Why Tampa? Stop moving toward the Democratic Party. Donald Trump was never supposed to win Pinellas County, and he was supposed to lose it by 10 or more in 2020. In Miami. What happened to 31%? He almost carried Miami-Dade. Mark my words, Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio, likely both of them, will carry Miami-Dade. And if they don't, Donald Trump absolutely will carry Miami-Dade if he is the Republican president for candidate in 2024. Absolutely. Without a doubt. But I think DeSantis and Rubio both could carry Dade. I do. What's the deal in Michigan? There's no campaign money. It feels like they aren't even trying there. Yeah. I just feel like they gave up. Whitmer was always the harder candidate. Then again, the polling does suck there. It always has sucked there. Trafalgar has Tudor Dixon down by 6. They also were stupid enough to try to pull what? You didn't notice how in Nebraska the abortion amendment blurred the lines between everything and screwed everybody? This dumb. And now Alyssa Slotkin's not going to go down because Mike Dittmer did not rerun against her. He decided to go even harder to the right and run for state senate. And he had the I told you so argument. And he lost. He lost even in his own backyard when he was the Livingston hometown boy. So there's not a lot of energy there. So you have people like Gibbs and John James trying. Well, John James is going to be all right. But Gibbs, he's got a fight. He's got a fight on his hands. And Kent County is going to matter. How they vote for governor is going to impact his race in Michigan 3. I haven't polled it myself, but if there was one state, that's I would say is difficult to poll, it's that one. And I don't think it's put away. I think it'll be closer than people think. I just don't think she's in striking distance. Will Republicans in Alaska figure out how to beat ranked choice voting to elect Palin? I don't know. I don't know yet. I told you guys what was going to happen there. I don't know. I don't like Palin's chances because there are just too many people who don't like her. A surprise would be New Hampshire. Took him out in the Senate, right, Hector? There will be surprises in the House. That's going to happen. It happens every cycle. There will be a surprise. Somebody we thought was absolutely a shoo-in to lose will hold on. Somebody we thought was a shoo-in to hold on will lose. That happens all the time. Okay, and could DeSantis and Rubio win Osceola this year? Probably not. Let me look for all in Osceola County. That's one of the fees. I got to tell you. I thought Trump, could get much closer, and he wound up losing it by 14. That's a little bit right outside. Seminole, Both of them absolutely can win Seminole, and so will Donald Trump in 2024, by the way. He will win Seminole County. That was once upon a time. More and more, one of the last Republican or Democratic bastions. And in the end, they started to slip and lose. Seminole County went for Biden by a hair, by about 7,000 votes. That's what happened. He slipped among some of the white vote, but he did so much better in South Florida, he just ate it up. And look, Monroe. I don't know. Osceola's tough. That's tough. That's a 14 votes, almost 14 swing. 12 is really that. 12 is really that. For me, that's that median line. I don't know. It's tough for me to envision anything over that. I mean, it's going to happen in some places. It's just that I know Osceola, and the problem Republicans have is that they're still one of the last Latino groups that are moving Republican are Puerto Ricans, and there are a lot of them in Osceola County. They may very well get there, but they are more liberal than other Hispanic groups. Great question. Last great question. Talked about a couple of you'll find locals soon. It was a great idea. I'm going to put that together. When I put together some of the other stuff and check it out, keep an eye out for it, especially supporters on locals. We'll have another voter analysis model that'll be going up very, very soon. So yes. Oh, I did just see Rhode Island 2. You know how long it's been since Republicans won Rhode Island 2? The Republican there is up by 6. Some of these things just don't make sense. How could we see Republicans leading by 6 points in Rhode Island 2, get down in both New Hampshire 1 and 2? It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. All right, but keep an eye out. Have a safe weekend. As always, thank you very much to our sponsors from Goldco and 4Patriots. Don't forget, go to 4patriots.com/TPP and TPPlikesgold.com. All right, share the poll. Get out there, far and wide. And when we come back, hopefully we'll have enough to fund it and get it going. All right. And what else am I missing here? Book club. Yes, local supporters. Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right before that, by the way, I'll be on the Georgia show for CDMedia, which starts at 2, but I'll be on for like 10 minutes on the Georgia show, talk about the poll. But 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, local supporters. Don't miss the book club. That is the last chapter for Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire. After we get done with Schneider, we will be moving on to John Mearsheimer, The Tragedy of Great Power Politics. So if you need to get some time to get that book, go ahead and do it. And we will discuss, the difference between the domestic coalition politics theory and what Mearsheimer thinks is kind of simpler than that, why states do what they do. But I think the value of the domestic coalition politics theory, everybody paying attention to politics right now, ever, should know Snyder's contribution about cartelized systems, log rolling, factions, and how to spot what are and how to spot and recognize myths of empire, especially with it was not a better time to do it with what's going on in Ukraine. And ask yourself, are we really a democratic system? Are we really? All right. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you don't even need the book to join. We read it out loud. We discuss. All right. Short outro. Love you guys. Nothing but loves for you. Deuces.
How much you wanna up it, that I can get you back inside your head, before the summer ends, and spread a little love, just for a little fun. I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker.